I watched the Aaron Rodgers documentary Enigma, a three-part docu-series, an hour-plus episode each. I've got some takeaways, and so does our Jets reporter, Nick Faria. Oh, baby, let's get into it.
I'm going to lose my gosh darn bananas. Boy Green Daily starts now. Zoinks!
I made it clear that my intention was to play, and my intention was to play for the New York Jets.
Hey, what's going on, everybody? I'm Paul Eston Jr., a.k.a. Boy Green. I'm the New York Jets digital reporter for Heavy.com. Welcome to Boy Green Daily, a daily New York Jets video show, also available wherever you get your podcast, people. And, boy, we've got a lot to get to in the show here, a lot to unpack. There's no question about it. But before we get started and bring in our wonderful guest, I see we have a gifted membership from MFC, baby. Okie dokie. Artichoke. We're in. Let's give a shout out to our newest member of the Boy Green Coffee Club. That is York Pinnock. You are now a member to the Boy Green Coffee Club, and MFC now has 23 gifted memberships this month, and that gives him a raffle ticket to our end of the month giveaway, which will include a lot of really cool New York Jets items. So every membership you guys gift or super chats you send in, it's $2.99 per membership, $2.99 per raffle ticket. You get a chance to win some awesome prizes at the end, and the person that gives the most memberships at the end of the month will receive a custom emoji. Currently, number one on the list is our number one Austrian Jet fan with 33 memberships. FL Phil 98, 5 behind at 28. And then we have MFC at 23, and then a big tie at 20 with people like Flora Lily and Big D, Ed Vargas, and Chef Kevin Gilbert. So we'll see who else gets into that race, baby, in due time. Thank you to MFC for gifting that membership. Let's get to our special guest on today's show. It's every Wednesday. It's our Jets reporter, Nick Faria from Athlon Sports. What's up, Nick?
How's everything going, Paul? Great to be back on.
Yeah, so we talked about this on the radio yesterday. Yesterday, the Aaron Rodgers Enigma documentary dropped, and I was like, I'm fascinated. He's a compelling guy. He's got a lot of weirdness to him. That's just strange. The random trailers of all of a sudden he's in some foreign country drinking some weird liquid and getting all trippy. And I'm like, wow, that's weird. And then there was stuff about his family. And I'm like, wow, this is fascinating because he never talks about his family estrangement. So that's kind of unique in its own way, too. But he ended the documentary with this quick clip I'm about to play. And damn it, I got to tell you, Nick, I'll play it for everybody real quick who didn't see it. It's like 5 seconds. But this is from Aaron Rodgers. This is the end of the documentary. Again, it's a 3-part docuseries. The episodes are like, an hour plus a piece. And Aaron Rodgers turns to the camera and goes,
"It could be the last year, but it could not be."
It could, if you didn't hear it, it could be the last year, or it could not be. And he smiles, and then Aaron Rodgers runs off the field. They show the footage from week 1 where he's running in with a couple of his teammates from the 49ers game, runs into the tunnel, fades to black, scene. And there it is from Aaron Rodgers. And I have to tell you, Nick, after watching it, I'm fully back in on Aaron Rodgers. We got to bring him back. We can win the Super Bowl. We could still do this. And the whole documentary, I highly recommend people watch it, is there's stuff about his Achilles rehab, which is really interesting to see him pushing it and have these aggressive conversations with his doctors. We saw for the first time, everyone talked about, Nick, and maybe you could share some insights on this. Aaron Rodgers was doing all his rehab, and then he showed up for like some pregame speech to the team ahead of the Jets-Chiefs game. That was the first season, obviously the first season that he blew his Achilles. That was 2023, and he met with the team. Now we heard about this mysterious speech. Alan Lazard had some things to say about it, which pissed off Aaron Rodgers because he wanted to keep it all in-house, I remember. And Netflix, I'm sure they edited it somewhat, but they gave basically the bulk of his entire speech, which was passionate and super interesting, too. So we saw that for the first time. But there's just a lot of compelling stuff of where he is ultra-driven and motivated to keep this thing going. And I'm back in. He's Aaron Rodgers. He's a Hall of Famer, for goodness sake. And I feel like we won't know what we're missing till it's gone. When Aaron Rodgers is gone and we're on to Tyrod Taylor or God knows whoever else, we're going to be like, damn, Aaron Rodgers happened. That 4-time NFL MVP was here. So I want to, after watching it, I want to maximize the experience. Johnny says the same thing after watching that series. I want him back, baby. I'm back in. That's where I'm at right now, Nick.
I'm not going to disagree with any of those notions. I just think that if you wanted him back, you were just waiting for the opportunity to do so. To me, I think there was a better opportunity to say, hey, he's playing a lot better. Beat the Jacksonville Jaguars, played a lot better against Miami, played a lot better down the stretch. I think we're at 13 touchdowns to 1 pick in his last 7 games.
Wow.
That, to me, is more evidence to say, hey, I want him back than a documentary about him essentially giving out all his quirks and everything. I wasn't really interested in the documentary. To me, I think the sack exchange 30 for 30 is a little more interesting because you get to see the behind the curtain stuff from a historical unit overall. I mean, we know Aaron Rodgers. We understand that he's a quirky guy. I think Enigma's a perfect explanation for him as a person. But at the same time, this isn't going to change anyone's opinion. If you're tired with Aaron Rodgers always being in the news, this is going to piss you off. If you're waiting to see an example of a reason why you should buy back into the Jets, and this will get you excited. To me, it's just, let's wait in January, see who the GM and the head coach hires are, and then we'll see exactly if Rodgers is willing to return or not.
Yeah, and another interesting thing, and this is something I was unaware of. Let me see. Let me make sure I have this. I was trying to have the year right, but I believe it was 2011. So he was 28 years of age, basically, when they won the Super Bowl. And Aaron Rodgers showed in this documentary that after winning the Super Bowl, all of a sudden he becomes super famous, and he's in the State Farm commercials and everything else. And after he won the Super Bowl, he sat alone with himself and said, "Now what?" And he contemplated this perfection and winning the Super Bowl and then getting close all these other times and losing, and that it messed up, like his identity as a human being and all this other stuff, which sent him on this crazy stuff for the psychedelics and everything else that he ended up, kind of unpacking there, which is pretty wild. So this, like I said, it's just there was a lot of hoopla here. One thing I will say though, so Aaron Rodgers seems to have this thing with the media, and this is something that was shown in the documentary. And I forgot this, Nick. Maybe you're going to remember this. So Aaron, they're traveling. So basically, it's dueling timelines. On one timeline is back to when Aaron Rodgers was in college and high school and all this, and then they would jump forward to the Achilles rehab, and then it would keep coming back until it finally met at a point, and it was all together. But one of the things he went back with, he said the local media fucked me, and I was like, whoa, what is he talking about? And they go back to when he was a member of the Green Bay Packers. He was getting off an airplane. There was a woman there that had breast cancer, and she was hoping to get Aaron Rodgers' signature. So there was a local news station in Green Bay that had a camera shot of this woman, like, "Ooh, I can't wait to see Aaron Rodgers." And then it shows Aaron Rodgers and a guy like blowing past her with the camera angles. And then it's like, Aaron Rodgers, the headlines it showed from the newspapers, Aaron Rodgers hates cancer patients. And I'm like, good Lord. And then Aaron talks about it. He's like, Jesus. He's like, they showed a jump cut. He said, I met with that same woman the week before, and we signed all of her gear, and I talked to her. And then after the story goes crazy, and they show clips of like from radio stations of saying, Aaron Rodgers is a horrible person. He trucked that cancer patient and all this stuff. And then they go back and then they go back to interview the woman, and the woman's like, yeah, no, he gave me an autograph last week. I don't know why there's any hoopla, but that was just his thing against the media of how they did in that moment, and then ran with it. And then Aaron Rodgers looks like this tool bag, and apparently it was all, how it was perceived. And I went like, damn, no wonder Aaron Rodgers hates the media. I'm like, that sucks.
Well, it's that, and I think it was also the public response to the COVID-19 immunized comment, where we can argue about what he said, what he meant, everything else. By and large, I think the court of public opinion, particularly in national media, sort of swapped with him after that moment, and where people didn't really care what he had to say, didn't really care what he put on the football field. They just wanted to see him fail. They wanted to see him struggle. And anytime they did that, they felt there was a proof that their opinion was correct. And, this is kind of where you're starting to see players respond in their own way. It's not just Aaron Rodgers, but it's a lot of different players as well, where they're creating their own podcasts. They're creating their own shows because they don't feel they are correctly portrayed. They're fairly portrayed by certain media members. Media members will want to tell the story. I remember perfectly blunt. I was listening to this past off season about the Jalen Hurts leadership scandal. And one reporter came out and essentially just spent about a good 600 words bashing him, just completely bashing him. And he would pinpoint comments made by players where they didn't say anything bad, but the writer insinuated a different meaning. And when I talked to another reporter about it, they essentially said, yeah, that's usually what he does. He looks for things more so when they're not there. And I think you see that a lot of times. And I'm not accusing anybody. I'm not going to name drop anybody. By and large, most part, you see a lot of great reporters out there, particularly on the Jets beat. It's just a matter of there are some with agendas and there are some with preconceived motivations of what they want to write and how they want to write it and how they want themselves to be perceived. So always you need to take what you read and what we analyze with grains of salt and understanding that, okay, this is one perspective. What about this other perspective? What could be the reason certain anonymous sources are coming forward? Is there another outlier to this? Is there another part of the story? By and large, reporters are looking for that, but sometimes they don't really want to put that one part out there as well.
Yeah, and they do talk about that in the documentary, what you just said with the immunized comment. And I'll just say this, because we don't normally talk about any of this kind of stuff normally on the show, but I think ultimately, the more that you hear about everything, Aaron Rodgers was trying to be too smart for his britches, and that he was trying to outsmart everybody. And he said, in his response to all the outrage, was, I was ready with a follow-up question. I was ready if a follow-up question was asked to clear everything up. The fact that he, in his head, thought that he would just clear everything up in the follow-up question means that he fucked up in the first part of saying that he was immunized and trying to be cagey. And I think that's and then America hated his guts. I mean, we saw how everyone flipped and got a lot more aggressive after that. And again, they show that in the documentary where he sort of apologizes and saying, man, I probably should have said that better, which, yeah, no shit, pal. I think that's true. But yeah, that's a turning point too. So there's both good and bad from your standpoint of both Aaron Rodgers' self-inflicted wounds and then things that have come up the other way for sure. Now, I'm curious because one of the other questions, again, I watched this documentary. I'm like, fuck it, I'm back in, baby. I'm all in. I'm all in on Aaron Rodgers. Like, let's go. And there's some people that say, Paul, come on, it's a documentary for God's sakes. Like, I was out and you shouldn't be back in because of a documentary. But there's other people in here saying, like MFC, I'll throw this one up there, although I think he's joking with Tim Boyle, but unless MFC says, unless they find a clear upgrade, he'll be back. What other options do they have? Tim Boyle, mother effing Chew says. But you said one option on social media, and I'm kind of curious. Nick, yesterday, the big breaking news, which I couldn't be happier for, because Michael Penix Jr. was one of my favorite quarterbacks in the draft last year. I love Michael Penix. I hope he freaking kills it. But for those who missed the news last night, Michael Penix is now the starting quarterback, not just for this week, moving forward. Kirk Cousins has been permanently benched, and now we're discussing whether he'll be cut or traded in the offseason after signing that crazy 4-year deal for $100+ million guaranteed. It's wild. But your tweet says this, Nick Pancake Faria. Well, if Jet fans don't want to deal with Aaron Rodgers anymore, there's always Kirk Cousins. Laughing, crying emoji. Kirk Cousins from one Achilles to another?
Yeah, so again, I am clearly being sarcastic. Obviously, the best choice forward if you're the Jets and you want to compete for 2025, it's to keep Aaron Rodgers. Kirk Cousins, the numbers are great. The record isn't, and that's just the reality of the situation. The guy is not the same player he once was, and I would argue the player he once was not exactly, going to win you championships. At the very least, with Rodgers, it's kind of like the Derek Carr-Rodgers debate a couple of years ago when the fan base was arguing between bringing in Derek Carr and not giving up the farm for Rodgers, or giving up the farm for Rodgers and moving on from a good to mediocre player in Derek Carr. That's the way I see Cousins and Rodgers once again. It just makes more sense to bring back Rodgers.
Yeah, over the last 5 games, I just wanted to get a peek at this for the Kirk Cousins stats. He has 1 touchdown to 9 interceptions. That's over the last 5 games there for the Atlanta Falcons. And I think it does go to show you a greater level of appreciation for Aaron Rodgers, because we talk about this Achilles being blown out, and people have varying results in their healing process. Aaron Rodgers, for as much as we make fun of him, the statistics are awesome. Kirk Cousins, I just mentioned that he had 1 touchdown, 9 picks, and you just said something like 13 touchdowns, 1 pick for Rodgers over like a insert amount of games.
Yep.
Yeah, I mean, shoot. Kirk Cousins' statistics this year, he has 16 picks this year and only 18 touchdowns. Aaron Rodgers has done, let me see. I got it in front of me here. 23 touchdowns, 8 picks. Like, some of his numbers are really good, and you've been seeing him moving around early in the season. It looked really bad for Kirk, like week 1, and then there showed some life, and then it kind of fell apart again. So I think it just goes to show that not every Achilles is built the same and coming back and everything, and sometimes they're gone. And some people still think Aaron Rodgers is washed, but I think when you look at some of those numbers, it's kind of crazy.
No, and you look at the tape and you clearly see he's not washed. Like, the arm is there. The mobility is coming back. But again, I've said this before, and it's the reason why I tell Jet fans about Jermaine Johnson. Don't expect him to be 100% week 1. Injuries like these, Achilles, ACLs, this is not just the recovery timeline is 6 to 9 months. So after that 9-month window, he'll be back to his former self. That rarely happens. You can't expect a player to just jump in and everything's going to be fine again. It takes time. You need to have confidence. You need to gain that confidence back in your leg, whichever leg you injured, whatever knee you injured, whatever ankle you injured. It takes some time to build confidence. It takes some time to get rehab. It takes time to get on the practice field and be able to move the same way you did. Now, ACL injuries, when I talk to doctors, they always say it's a 2-year injury. The first year is getting your confidence back. The second year is when you're back at 100%. Achilles are very similar. With Rodgers, you're seeing the timeline obviously move a little quicker, but early on in the season, he didn't look confident in his movements. He wasn't really sure about his movements. People will point to the hamstring injury and the knee injury and everything like that, but I think a large part of that also had to do from him recovering from the Achilles. Now he's fully healthy because he trusts his Achilles again. I think we're looking at Kirk Cousins and saying, why aren't you playing the same way as Rodgers? But we also have to acknowledge that his Achilles injury happened later in the season last year. So his recovery timeline is not the same as Aaron. So there has to be some semblance of fairness when we talk about players recovering from injury. This is not just a plug-and-play Madden situation where the player's, off the injury report, he's back at 100%. That does not happen, and it most likely will not happen with Jermaine Johnson either.
It's fair. Again, Nick Faria, our Jets reporter, joining us from Athlon Sports here on Boy Green Daily, baby. And make sure you guys keep getting those memberships in. And I'll tell you this, if we gift, let's call it, if we give 15 memberships in the next 12 minutes, I will give 5 more on top of that. So there you go. That's the 8 o'clock number. Let's put some urgency on the clock. If in the next 12 minutes we get 15 memberships, I'll give 5 more off the top. So let's keep that in mind, people, and we'll see if you guys can dig. Again, you guys can always send in YouTube Super Chats instead if you prefer, if you can't gift memberships. Again, they're $2.99 a pop, so feel free to do so. Nick, the GM candidacy search continues for the New York Jets, and he interviewed a name that we knew. The name wasn't like Thomas Dimitroff. We're like, whoa, we didn't know that was going to happen, and then we got it. The one that we knew was coming and then actually went through is Jon Robinson. And Jon Robinson is fascinating because when you look at his candidacy, he never had a losing season with the Tennessee Titans. He was 9-7 for 4 straight years, and then an 11-win season, then a 12-win season, and I believe the next one after that, whenever he got fired, they were 7-5 at the time of his firing. They ended up losing out and had a losing record, but that wasn't on him. He would go. He wasn't there anymore. So he was 7-5. So again, that's fascinating to hear. As the Jets have had one winning season in the last 14 years, to hear a guy had a winning season every single time is like, whoa, that's interesting. But as we all know, the slight bugaboo on the report card is the A.J. Brown situation, which again, Jet fans are incredibly scared. They're like, wait a second. Jon Robinson said, no, we're not going to pay A.J. Brown. We're going to trade him. And then Mike Vrabel was like, over my dead body, you're going to trade him. And he's like, okay, no problem. Move over, Vrabel. Boom. and traded him. So like, that benefited you, Mr. Eagles guy, quite well. But for the Tennessee Titans and that game, because for those who don't know, John Robinson was fired the days after the game where the Eagles came to Tennessee with A.J. Brown.
Other way around. Yeah, they played in Philly.
In Philly, excuse me. And they had that happen where he says, "Oh, A.J. Brown, I know that guy." And he goes crazy in the game. And then all of a sudden we're like, oh, Jesus. And Robinson gets fired. And you can connect the dots on why you believe he got fired from that. But in his run, he's been to the playoffs, went to the AFC Championship game, won division titles. So there's a lot to like. But boy, that thing is hard to overlook.
So first off, I want to preface that I do have a shrine to John Robinson in my house. Very thankful for that man and all the good things he brought to my family. Seeing A.J. Brown in Midnight Green, it's a beautiful, beautiful sight. It's just absolutely beautiful. But I think this is where, and I've said this point before, and I do believe with Robinson, it reigns true. Records for GM. His record as a GM, it's something close to like 20 games over 500, something like that. His record as a GM is very good. Very good compared to guys like Joe Douglas. But at the same time, are records the only thing we care about when it comes to general managers? You know, with head coaches, the record's all that matters. That's why people want to have Vrabel again. Doesn't really have losing seasons, got screwed over by the executive. Everyone loves his toughness and tenacity. That's why a lot of Jet fans want Vrabel. His record is pristine. John Robinson's record's really good. And based on that metric, Jets fans should be over the moon for him. But a GM's record does not matter in a lot of different ways because it's not just the record. It's the draft picks. It's trades. It's what did you do to build the team? At times you can have a bad GM and have a good head coach, and the head coach is able to sort of scrounge some wins here, go 7-10, 9-7, 8-8, those kind of things, but you're just hovering around mediocre for a very long time. And with John Robinson, another reason why he struggled in Tennessee was he had a lot of struggles with first-round picks. There were a lot of misses in the first round from 2016 onward, and it sort of pushed the team back, held the team back, because when they needed to grow beyond Derrick Henry, they couldn't. Ryan Tannehill was very, very good, a serviceable starter, but the minute he started breaking down, they didn't have a response at quarterback. They gave away A.J. Brown to an NFC contending team solely because they didn't want to pay him $25 million. It's still, to this day, one of the worst trades in NFL history because that same year, Philadelphia went to the Super Bowl. So Robinson's record, if we talk about record, okay, great. He's got the credentials. But if you look at his overall stuff of what he did, stuff that actually should be judged for general managers, it's not that clear cut. I would argue he's probably the least qualified out of any person the Jets have interviewed right now.
Wow, there you go. By the way, Abshaw, he sent in a channel membership over PayPal, which is always an acceptable means, so appreciate that coming in. Again, keep them coming in. We got another 7 minutes in this urgent, random giveaway we're doing right now. Is again, if we could get some more memberships, I'll be gifting some myself. So, every member you get you a raffle ticket for our New York Jets giveaway at the end of the month. So why not jump on that now? All right, Nick Faria, we'll open up the phone lines here in just a few minutes here on the program. I don't know if I got your take on this, so let's ask about him. Again, this one isn't official yet, so I'm sure we'll talk about it again once this interview officially goes through. But Louis Riddick is another guy on the list. And before we even talk about Louis, I'm just kind of curious about people that are publicly critical of the Jets. So it was Bill Belichick, who apparently expressed interest in the Jets. There's the Louis Riddick. He makes fun of the Jets all the time. How does that factor, if at all? Because it does for fan perception. Like, oh, I don't want this guy. He constantly dunks on the Jets. For the people that are either in public eyes, like an ESPN person or media interviews or what have you, should or does that factor in to any of the analysis of what they should be in terms of potentially having any Jets job, whether it was head coach or GM?
Someone's going to have to explain to me, Paul, why are Jet fans upset if executives trash on them in public appearances, but then interview for the job. What I not to say that they're wrong with that thought.
Yeah.
I'm just wondering why people are upset about that. That would be my first question back.
So what I've gotten from people is that, if you're disrespecting, for lack of another word, if you're like crapping on the team, then why would the Jets fans and representatives of the team, why would we want to give you an opportunity? Screw you, pal. We want people, I'm assuming not what I'm saying, what I've seen from people is that people that have been intrigued by the Jets or supportive of the Jets, for those that are in public eyes. Not everyone is. For instance, John Robinson, I haven't heard him do a lot of interviews publicly talk about the Jets. Why would he? It doesn't make any sense. So I've heard that a lot.
Okay, that's fine. My big thing with Louis Riddick is he does have a scouting background. He's got a strong scouting background. He was with Washington, was with Philadelphia for a long time. Those teams were able to draft some pretty good players overall during those particular years. But when I look at where this team is, I think they're going to need someone who has been around the scouting circle over the last decade. He hasn't had an executive position. Sorry, I'm putting on my seatbelt.
No, that's all right. Yeah, safety first. Safety first.
But he hasn't had a front office position in close to a decade. So I think that would go against him overall. I'm not really worried, and I don't think people should be worried about if they dunk on the Jets or not. I think the Belichick story is pretty funny considering all the stuff that happened between him and the organization for decades, and then he comes to them asking for a job. I mean, that is hilarious. But when it comes to Riddick, I'm not bothered by it. I don't think people should be either. I think this is just an early part of the process where the Jets are interviewing candidates that are available. That doesn't mean they're going to hire them, but it does mean that they are trying to figure out exactly who they want as an executive, as their lead executive. Riddick is just one of three people we know of so far. The other one, of course, is Thomas Dimitroff. As of right now, of the three names mentioned, I think Dimitroff is probably the most qualified. He's got a 13-year run with the Atlanta Falcons. He was able to draft a quarterback, showed the ability to find and draft a successful quarterback in Matt Ryan, but he also drafted some really good players as well. Julio Jones, you talk about a lot of the offensive line that Atlanta brought in. Some of that was brought in from Dimitroff himself, Chris Lindstrom as well, one of the top linemen in the league right now. So there's a lot of positives to look at Dimitroff's resume, but very similar to John Robinson, these guys were fired for reasons. There were legitimate reasons why these people were fired in the first place. For Dimitroff, it was the fact that the defense started aging and breaking down. Matt Ryan got older and he didn't have a plan after that. John Robinson, it was trading A.J. Brown for essentially pennies and not having a consistent plan to replace him. So there are certain reasons why veterans are fired in the first place, and they should deter some teams from moving on from them. Now, for the Jets, they're going to have to make that decision whether or not they want a proven professional at each job, or if they want someone who is fresh, has fresh ideas, and you kind of are waiting to see what they do and what their plan's going to be. That is not for us to decide and say it's right or wrong. It's up for the Jets to determine which is the best course of action for them.
Yeah. Well, let me ask you a couple of things here. First off, let's talk about the Bill Belichick thing real quick. So over the weekend, it was reported by Diana Rossini first that someone from the Bill Belichick camp reached out to the Jets to express interest in their head coaching position. Brian Costello, the New York Post, followed it up saying, oh, not just anyone from the Belichick camp reached out to the Jets. Bill Belichick himself reached out to the Jets and said, hey, how you doing? So I turn this to you because I asked this to Richard Meany. We'll see if he answers that question on his podcast. And again, Bill Belichick is already introduced as the North Carolina head coach at this point when this news nugget, this rumor, this whatever, it's not a rumor. I mean, she's reporting that it happened. And confirmed by everyone, Connor Hughes and Brian Costello and everybody. Riddle me this first. Why would this nugget come out? Whose camp does this come from? Because it sounds like my perception of it is Bill Belichick reached out to the Jets and Jets said, kick rocks, pal. We don't want you. And then, I just trying to find out where it came from because, if the Jets leaked it, they say, hey, look, our job's so great that Belichick wanted to come here. And then we didn't want him. I don't get the benefit of what it would be from the Belichick camp of that nugget coming out. Because, what does that do for him? He's already at North Carolina. And I don't understand. So, yeah, fill me in because I'm trying to understand.
Yeah, so to me, this screams that this was the Jets that sort of leaked it. But there's a reason for it, and you kind of touched on it before, and it's to show that this job is attractive. We had Bill Belichick come in here. Now, they did not turn him down. I want to preface that. They
Okay.
didn't turn him down. They were very surprised when he came out and said, I'm interested in interviewing for the position. Let's see if we can get something in the books. And the Jets were like, okay, let's talk about this as a team, and then we'll try to get back to you. We're still in the early phases of talking about this, what kind of position we're looking for, if we want to hire the head coach before the GM. And then by that time, Belichick had signed with North Carolina. The timing was never right for either side. Belichick came to them and said, I'm interested in this role. And then a few days later, it's, oh, wait, North Carolina is willing to give me a 5-year deal where I'm going to be essentially the czar of football for that program. So it was never about the Jets turning down Belichick. It was about Belichick going to the Jets, but then getting the offer that enticed him the most immediately after. So the Jets, I would assume, did this and said, hey, we've got an attractive job here. Mike Vrabel's already said he'd be willing to come here if it works out for him and we play our cards right. Bill Belichick was interested in coming here. This is an attractive job, everybody, and you should be lining up to coach for us. I think that's the message, not that they turned him down at all.
Good. I'm glad for that clarity. The thing that I don't understand is Bill Belichick's not currently associated with the team. If he wanted to interview, they could have interviewed, and that could have happened. Why? What was the wait? What's the? Well, the Jets are like, hey, let's think about it. What's there to think about? Again, I'm not for or wasn't for Bill Belichick being the next head coach of the Jets. I was not for it. But to your point, with all these interviews to do with GM candidates, I don't mind talking to people because you bring these people in the building and you say, hey, what's your plan? And then you hear a plan, and you don't have to hire the guy, but interesting plan. That's interesting. I'll put your notes aside. Next guy, what's your plan? And you can really absorb a lot of these conversations. And Bill Belichick, by all accounts, is the greatest head coach of all time, which is disgusting to say, but it is what it is. And he's this guy, and he has maybe not the guy, but that he has this knowledge and information, and he would, when again you ask him that question outside of any grumbling that may have happened, maybe there would have been something in there that is valuable from his insights on what he believes is wrong with the team or how he would fix it or things of that nature. Why didn't he interview? Because there was nothing holding it back because he's not currently tied with the team. The Jets could have he says, hey, I'm interested in the job. All right, let's talk right now. Come on down to One Jets Drive.
Well, again, it's not like he spoke on the phone to Woody Johnson. We have no idea who he reached out to to potentially line up an interview. It could have been an assistant GM. It could have been somebody completely different that didn't really have the direct line. And again, I'm not saying I know exactly what happened, but I'm just inferring, putting two and two together. Again, from what Costello said, from what I heard from other people, from other reporters, it sounded like it was bang, bang. Belichick reached out. And then the Carolina news kind of broke, and the discussion started happening with Carolina a lot faster than I think he even expected. So he was looking for a head coaching job, and the Jets are still in the process of, okay, we are still looking through candidates. We're interviewing GMs right now. We're not interviewing head coaches. If Belichick was going to wait for the end of the season, I think there's a legitimate argument to be made that he could have interviewed for the Jets. But he didn't. He found his new job in the middle of this interview process, in the middle of this review process for the organization. So the timing just wasn't right. It's not that the Jets declined him. It's just that they weren't ready, and Belichick seemed to be pushing teams to try and make a decision before the true hiring process began.
So random circumstances, the reason that this didn't progress any further.
I think that's more than likely.
Okay. Let me get one more in here. The way I was just going to say this would have sounded like really aggressive. I don't mean this. I just heard it in my head before I said it. I don't know how to say it now otherwise, so I guess I'll just say it. And hopefully,
It's not like I hate you, Paul.
Well, that's good to know. Are you an ageist? And I don't mean it like that. I'm saying, like, during this head coaching process or GM process, because I heard a name earlier in the comment section. Someone said, hey, what about Pete Carroll? And my immediate thought was, I don't want that old bastard. And then I'm like, Paul, and I'm saying all this in my head while we're doing this interview, and in my head I'm like, Paul, don't be an ageist, you bastard. You should be open to everybody. But I immediately was like, oh, hell no. And the same thing for Belichick, to be honest with you. He's 72 years old. If he was 50, I still wouldn't want him because I hate his guts, but still, I mean, I would have been a little bit more open in my head. Should we be ageist in this process, or should the Jets like literally consider everybody from 30-something-year-old Ben Johnson to 74-year-old Pete Carroll?
So I don't think, they shouldn't leave any stone unturned. And I don't think they will. I think if there's any name that they feel interested in, if they want to have a conversation with, I think they should do it. Now, that is me in the interview process.
Yes.
I don't think they should hire Pete Carroll. I don't think they would hire Bill Belichick. I think it would be a mistake. I am looking, and I've said this before many times, and it's pissed a lot of people off, whether it's here or the Jake Asman show. I have been steadfast in my belief that the best way to build a team from the ground up and sort of, diversify the rebuild and quickly speed up the rebuild is to hire a young, offensive-minded head coach with experience in quarterbacks. It is the only way to keep an offensive system intact where you're not throwing different playbooks at the quarterback every 2 seasons. It is the only way to keep a system intact where the quarterback is developing at a conventive rate where you know and see the trajectory of where this team needs to be, and then moving forward with it to be a championship contender. To me, you look at examples like the Green Bay Packers, the Minnesota Vikings, San Francisco, Los Angeles, teams that have been very successful for a consistent amount of time over the last few years. They have young offensive-minded coaches who have brought in their system and are able to use their system with a young quarterback or different quarterbacks as well. Jordan Love being in the system with Mike LaFleur and having that success. Great stuff overall. And, of course, you have Kevin O'Connell, had Kirk Cousins for a little bit, but now it's J.J. McCarthy waiting in the wings, and he's developing Sam Darnold at a rate no one thought possible. All these things happen because he is a great head coach, but also a young offensive mind who calls his own plays. I think that is extremely important in the modern NFL. When you are rotating in offensive coordinators time and time again, eventually you could get one wrong, and then it would cost you your job. I don't think it's worth that. I think ultimately, if you want to be successful, the best way to do it is to have a guy who understands that the most important position is quarterback. And you need to make sure that you can get the quarterback position right with people that are around him and surrounding him with people that know what to do to get the best out of him. So to me, it's not an ageist thing. I would say, if anything else, I'm a positionless bastard. I want the offensive guy. I don't want the defensive-minded people. Give me the offensive guys, and then you hire a older defensive assistant to run your defense with his own autonomy to it.
Yeah, Vic Fangio seems to be doing quite well in that regard.
Seems like a great guy.
Yeah, for the Philadelphia Eagles. We got a couple hundred people in the room, and folks, we're going to open up the phone lines in a second. I see we have a bunch of people already waiting, so technically the phone lines are already open. But there are 2 things here. First off, yesterday, FL Phil 98 called into the show, and he sang a song. He sent in a song that he wrote about the Jets and next year being a thing.
Like about breakfast.
Yeah, and no breakfast was involved there for him, but it was about next year. And Hep heard it and said, ooh, I think I could put that to music. So we actually have Hep got the lyrics, and he pulled out the guitar, and we have that video ready to go. So, folks, if we get, let's say, let me take a peek at the comments here. If we get, let's see, 10 Boy Green Coffee Club memberships, we'll release that today on the show. So we'll see if we could get that here on it as well. And interestingly, we get this YouTube super chat real quick. This is the one last detour I want to make here before we get going. Every time we get a YouTube super chat. Wow. Ace of Spade. Well done here with the timing of the super chat. SNY said Vrabel's a top choice. Have you heard anything? And before you answer, we've got the footage. We're a prepared show. We have that ready to roll. Here was Connor Hughes on Jets' final drive, an SNY program that came out on Monday. And also Connor Hughes followed up with some additional reporting yesterday that says Mike Vrabel is the coach they covet the most. Let's hit the footage, people in the back.
From everybody that I have talked to, this is going to be a very thorough search for the Jets, all that stuff. But The name that is kind of here, and then the rest of the pack, from my understanding, it is Mike Vrabel. And I know the Jets have already put out their feelers to gauge interest, if Vrabel would be interested in the Jets, if there's anything there that he would, want the job or take the job or anything like that. But he is somebody that, from my understanding, is atop the Jets' wish list. And it would not surprise me at all if the Jets actually went to Vrabel, and one of the things to try to get him to be their head coach was they said, look, we'll hire you, and then we'll keep you involved in our search for the general manager. Now, Robinson, again, I don't believe that is a precursor to get Vrabel. Look, those guys know each other. Those guys work together. It's not like they're best friends. It's not like they're vacationing together. It's not like these guys are, the godfather of another one's kid. Like they work together. That's a connection, but I don't get the sense that they're like BFFs or anything like that. But I do believe that if Vrabel is the top person for the Jets, and they will not be the only one who has Vrabel atop their wish list, in the effort to do everything they can to get him, it wouldn't surprise me to say, look, let's get you involved in the GM search as well.
Interesting. So let's throw that over to you, Nick Faria. Can you, corroborate any of what Connor Hughes said, that Mike Vrabel is the coach that they covet the most? He's atop their wish list, and I'm sure, again, to his point, a lot of teams will have him atop their wish list for a variety of reasons because he's an attractive coach, and that they may be willing to do, hey, man, we'll hire you and allow you to pick the GM, or help pick the GM, because Rich Cimini said that on his podcast like 2 weeks ago, and Mike Vrabel, from sources he talked to, he'd be open to the job if they like the GM. Well, shoot, if he was in the running to help pick the GM, I guess that would equate. So your thoughts?
A couple different things. First off, doesn't surprise me one bit. I can't corroborate any of that.
Okay.
But if it's coming from Connor Hughes, I think we should expect that to be his fact. This guy's probably the top reporter on the beat right now. So I've been doing this a lot longer than I have. But listen, with Vrabel, doesn't surprise me. The Jets have been looking for their Bill Parcells for a long time now, and they're trying to find the next Parcells. And if they believe Vrabel's to be that guy, then they're going to try to do everything they can to get him back. I do want to preface one thing, though, and I think this is where Jet fans will get themselves in trouble a little bit. If they don't get Vrabel, because as you just said, he's going to be one of the most coveted coaches in this cycle. The Cowboys could want him if they fire Mike McCarthy. The Raiders could want him, and they have a top 2 pick, potentially could get a young quarterback in there. There's a lot of different teams that could entice Vrabel overall, simply just by their overall roster, the upcoming cap space, the draft pick, whatever it is. If they don't get Vrabel, if the Jets are unable to get Mike Vrabel, it's not the end of the world. And I think that's what Jet fans need to remember, because when you are an organization looking for your head coach and you don't get the top guy and you don't get your second top guy, doesn't necessarily mean you're going to be in a bad situation. Sometimes missing out on the top free agent or the top coach or the top executive is the best thing that can possibly happen for your organization. I looked at it from my perspective in 2016. Philadelphia was in the market for a head coach, and they loved Hugh Jackson. Everyone wanted Hugh Jackson, and he chose the Browns over Philadelphia. He chose the Cleveland Browns over the Philadelphia Eagles, and Philadelphia was a laughingstock for a good 2 weeks. You lost out on the top coach to Cleveland, and they ended up getting this guy, Doug Peterson. Didn't call plays in Kansas City, understood how to do it, though, had a lot of experience in developing quarterbacks, worked with Andy Reid, and Philadelphia said, fine. He's not our top choice. He's not a top 2 choice, but we'll give him an opportunity. We'll give him a shot and see how it goes. And it ended up working pretty well for Philadelphia. Okay. It just a few years later, they fired Doug Peterson. They're looking for a new head coach. They really like Josh McDaniels. They really like Robert Saleh. They really like some of these other guys. They like Brandon Staley. So they settle on a guy, Nick Sirianni. Worked out pretty well for them. Just because you don't get the top guy on your list does not mean it's the end of the world. Sometimes it's the best thing that could have possibly happened for your organization.
Okay, there you go. That's some motivation just in case we miss out on the, the top prom date. Hey, there's always another fish in the sea. I love it there from our guy, Nick Faria. We got a bunch of gifted memberships coming in. Shout out to Ed Vargas, baby. We love to see it. Oh, yeah. That combination. Oh, baby. Membership Boy Green Coffee Club or the big fella, Paul Knicks fan 73 Niles, 99 Jet, Jason Ratliff, and Matt Coy. You're all now members to the Boy Green Coffee Club. Our number one Austrian Jet fan just gifted a membership, baby. Okie dokie, artichoke. Let's get that one in too. Mikey Boy Jets LI. If we get 4 more memberships, baby, we'll drop the HEP video that he put together. And by the way, I'll give you an update on the scorecards. Ed Vargas has 25 gifted memberships so far this month. And our number one Austrian Jet fan is at 34, which is the top leaderboard at this current moment in time. So things are getting spicy. So again, 4 more gifted memberships, and we will release the HEP song video from FL Phil 98. Okay, we got a bunch of callers. Let's start getting to them here. First up on the docket is Johnny Boy.
Hey, good morning, guys. What's going on, Nick?
How's it going, buddy?
Green? Hey, Nick, go Mets. I see the Mets hoodie on, bro. Let's go.
GM.
Hey, so I wanted to touch on the Aaron Rodgers documentary.
Oh, yeah.
I thought it was awesome, first and foremost. I think we got to see an insight into his life, the way he thinks, the way I think a lot of people misunderstand the individual that is Aaron Rodgers, right? And what kind of motivates him and what makes him tick and whatnot.
Mm-hmm.
Seeing him 19 days to walk back into the room where all the players were at, they all were smiling and, were hyped to see him. And he makes that speech and everything. You're just like, man, what a competitor. To be able to come on there and just start walking, that just shows you so much in regards to this guy. So I say that because with this year, with the hamstring situation, the issues that he was having with the injuries and et cetera, he's still trying to play through it. It shows how much it means to a lot of the younger guys that are in the locker room.
Mm-hmm.
The other thing I wanted to touch base on, which to me, I thought was the biggest thing in the actual documentary, was the Matt LaFleur conversation. And when Matt LaFleur was hired, right, and people were like, oh, is Aaron Rodgers going to adapt to it? Very similar to what's going on right now. And Matt LaFleur was like, he was the first one in, last one out. The dude wanted to learn. He never gave me no crap in regards to that. So I thought that spoke volumes because he's said it multiple times, especially on the Pat McAfee show, in regards to, if we get somebody new, I'm willing to learn whatever new system comes in, et cetera, et cetera. And I was like, damn, maybe, you know what I mean? Like he really is wanting to do this, which is the case, which is the new coach when we get him.
I had the same. I just want to jump in to say I had the same takeaway, Johnny. When the switch happens, McCarthy gets fired, LaFleur comes in, and he's talking about the learning the new offense, the collaboration, the coming together, and then obviously leading to great success for the Green Bay Packers. LaFleur had like 3 straight 12-5 seasons, or these 13-win seasons, whatever they were, and they were crazy. And I was like, damn. So an old dog can learn a new trick. Rodgers was old then. So, even though he's a little older now, he was willing to commit himself and learn. And while there were some bumps, they figured it out, and it led to this explosive offense. So I had the same takeaway while watching the doc there, Johnny.
And the other thing, too, with the stuff about him being like this crappy teammate and all that stuff like that, I mean, you start seeing a lot of old teammates from back then where they were talking in regard to them. The David Bakhtiari one, when during the COVID and they brought in Jordan Love, and he was like, watch out. Like, that just shows you how competitive the guy is. And my favorite part of the whole stuff, when he talks about the ego death situation and talking about killing the ego and stuff like that, and being able to truly adapt to everything going on, the leadership role, what he did for Jordan Love, that's not talked about.
Super cool.
The love between him and Mike McCarthy, everything on the news has shown that him and Mike McCarthy hate each other, and there's this big rift between them, and that's not the case. So now that's not saying that I want Mike McCarthy as the head coach or anything like that at all.
Okay,
but
good. Yes,
it's made me be like, this guy is a warrior. This guy is somebody that if he really is not being able, like, if he still can't play, like, he would tell you, I don't have it anymore, and I would be able to go ahead and quit. So I just wanted to get your guys' take in regards to pretty much everything I was saying in regards to that. And the last thing I would say is the Dimitrov stuff, man. Hey, he's making it more and more and more. Like the more and more you read about him, I really suggest a lot of fans go out, look him
100%.
up, see what he's done. 2-time executive of the year. The stuff that he's done. Some of the picks are kind of like, you're like, who? Him? This guy? Right? But then you're like, but that's every GM. And not every GM hits 100% on draft picks. But his free agency pickups were really, really good as well. So,
like, I mean, franchise. So thank you for the call, John. Franchise quarterback, one of the best wide receivers of all time, and Julio Jones. I mean, you start going through some of the pieces. I mean, it is a compelling case there for Thomas Dimitroff, Nick.
Well, and I think the other thing with him that we kind of forget, he took over for a Falcons team that was in absolute disarray.
For sure.
2007, they were one of the worst teams in NFL history. 4 wins. It was the onset of the Michael Vick arrest. Bobby Petrino quits after 13 games and gives out laminated cards to his players at the locker room. I mean, what a bum that was. But at the end of the day, Dimitrov took over the job, brings in Mike Smith, brings in Matt Ryan, and a year later, it's a 7-win improvement. That doesn't just happen because you get the right head coach and quarterback. You got the right GM as well, because it wasn't just Matt Ryan that did it either. Michael Turner was brought in. He was a revelation.
I love Michael Turner.
Obviously, all these other players that were brought in and were really successful, all that stuff worked out really, really well. But one thing about Dimitrov that a lot of people overlook is that he rebuilt Atlanta's offensive line from scratch. Started in 2008, and by the time he left in 2020, the offensive line was there. It was a very strong offensive line. The difference was Matt Ryan was older. The defense was not as good, and there were other reasons why Dimitrov was fired 5 games into that season. But by and large, if you're looking for a GM with experience, with success, he is at the top of that list.
Yeah, there's no question about it. And we got the memberships we're looking for. DNY for life, a.k.a. Devin, baby. Yeah. Our 5 new members, real quick, to the Boy Green Coffee Club are Packers Gamer YT. We got a lot of Packers fans that have come over here. We appreciate it. Mahar Khalil, Kickin' Pickles, Frank, and Sweet Baby Jesus. Oh, my goodness. We got some celebrities coming in here. So without further ado, Nick, you and everyone else are about to hear this for the very first time, and then we'll continue on with our callers. Again, FL Phil 98. Called in yesterday. He sent in a song that he sung, and it was about it always being next year and some of the disappointments that comes with being a Jets fan. And Hep heard it and said, I think I could put that to a guitar. So this is a song I've been singing to myself in my car, and now maybe you guys will be doing it too. Here is Hep, an exclusive video drop. He made this yesterday, and we're revealing it for the very first time. Play it.
Sitting here where we've been sitting before, wondering why we keep taking more. If you know why, please share with me. Starting every season in anticipation, hope it don't end in frustration. Why won't the football gods just let us be? We are fans of the New York Jets. Root for them, you'll have regrets. Ain't been happy since Super Bowl III. We need change, folks have been fired. We need change, it's time to inspire. Pray they turn around as quick as can be. Here's to next year, let's believe we can win. Here's to next year, start all over again. Let's keep smiling, there'll always be next year. Let's keep smiling, there'll always be next year. Let's keep smiling, there'll always be next year. Jets, Jets. Ow! William.
Baby, there's the Hep song in all its glory. Shout out to Hep, and shout out to as well. David said that sounded Bob Dylan-esque. Oh, wow. Okay. All right. I like it. So shout out to FL Phil 98 for the lyrics and Hep for delivering the song, baby. So absolutely beautiful. So there you go. And I'm sure that we'll play that more during the show. But let's keep going on the phone lines. Up next, we have Chef Kevin Gilbert.
BG, Nick, how y'all doing?
We're doing great, Chef. Thank you.
Awesome. BG, thank you for having me on your platform, man. Hopefully everything's all good in your house with the power and all that kind of stuff.
Oh, thank God.
Man.
Yeah, that's been figured out. So, you know, when people say, oh, man, give me a super chat. I'd love to get a burger tonight. Give me a super chat. I need heat for my home. Good Lord. So thank you guys for all the support. That's less than ideal. And it happened like in a snowstorm. So like the guy came over. There was a first guy that came over to check the heat. And he went, wow, this is shitty timing, huh? And I'm like, yes, it is, sir. Thank you for bringing that up. So yeah, but it's all fixed now. Thank God. Blessed be.
Awesome. And Nick, man, thank you so much for your insight, man. It's truly appreciated, man. Thanks again. So Dimitrov, I'm on board, man. I just feel like these Jet fans, these delusional Jet fans that want to just tank next season without this season being over are just complete idiots, man. Like, we got to really think about like who we have right now with the right coaching, the right GM. Like, we could really turn this around, man. And we got, Smith, Lazard, Greg Reddick, Reed. We have a bunch of people coming off the books. Mosley, have Rodgers restructure his deal. We got some money and we can lock some stuff up. So I really feel like getting these pieces and going in the right direction. Like, why do we just need to fail again next year? Like, it don't make no sense to me. Like, why not just still try all in? I'm not saying Super Bowl, but at least still just try to give it a shot rather than just sell the whole farm system, get rid of young talent that we have right now where their ceiling isn't as high. So we're going to get back trash anyway. We trade Garrett Wilson away. We still need another wide receiver. It doesn't make no sense. So those Jet fans that just keep talking about tanking next season without this season being over, yo, effing idiots, man. Y'all need to stop with that stuff, man.
I just have a question for those very people, because if you want to tank in 2025, then you clearly don't want Mike Vrabel as the head coach, right? That's my understanding. If you're not
because of his immediate ability to turn things around, right? Yeah,
you wouldn't want Vrabel at all. Is that my understanding to that? The Jets fans in the comments can answer that question. But for those that want, a full tank mode where it's a rebuild, then the expectation should be you don't want Vrabel. You don't want any veteran coach. You don't want a veteran executive. You want young guys. You are looking to hire Ben Johnson or Joe Brady and then saying, okay, we know we're going to be bad in 2025. We're going to push to get our quarterback in the draft in 2026, whether it's Manning, whether it's somebody else, doesn't really matter. But it's okay. We're going to push that quarterback conversation to 2026 only. If that's the case, perfectly fine. But then I don't want to hear another person complain about Mike Vrabel being the only guy this team should be hiring.
Yeah, like, this is a business. So these people that are talking, I promise you, they're not paying money to see the game. Because there's no way you're going to pay money to see trash, to see a rebuild. That's not what people want to do. So, I mean, they can just sit at home, complain, throw their Doritos at the television, all that, and complain. But it don't make no sense financially. For a business, you want the hope of like, okay, this is our season. We're going to do well and all that. If you just get rid of everything and just show that, all right, Rodgers, he's like, this is how I would be sold in to anything with stupid talk about Rodgers having that big dead cap hit that second season. Like, that's where, things are going to hit the fan. But if we could just tie up everything right now coming into this next season, I feel like we'll be in a better position, man. I honestly do.
Also, there's a misconception. Just because you have a lot of dead caps does not mean that you can't compete. Doesn't mean
the Broncos.
That, you can't bring in good players. Like, Philadelphia's got massive dead cap, for Hassan Reddick and all these other different players that have left in free agency over the last few years. Like, I think their dead cap is close to like $40 million this year, and their dead cap is always pretty large from most perspectives. So you can win in the NFL when you've got a lot of dead cap. You just have to have a GM that is smart with the salary. You need an owner that is willing to pay that money to players not on their team while also paying people that are on their team. Some owners are like that, others aren't. But this notion that you can't compete with a large dead cap, because you look at the Saints, what they have done is they've pushed a problem down the road for a decade. This is not something they just started doing. They have been doing this for decades, well during the Drew Brees, Sean Payton era. This is not something new that they started doing the last couple of years. The chickens have come home to roost for them because it's been that long. But for teams that are going to eat up dead cap, whether they push some off to 1 year or the other, that's not going to deter them from free agents. That's not going to blow up their free agent plan. They're going to be able to bring in guys and help their team moving forward. This misconception that all this dead cap is going to hurt this team and you're not going to be able to sign free agents, it's wrong because other teams have done it. You just need the executive, the right executive, to come in and smooth everything over and have his plan and develop his plan into wins.
Yeah, I agree. And I know you got a couple of calls, BG. Just two quick things, man.
Yes, of course.
I rarely disagree with you, man. But hearing you before talking about Bill being the greatest coach of all time, man.
Ooh.
Lombardi, my guy.
Oh,
Lombardi,
I love that. That's Lombardi
you,
reference.
You.
You and Nick are there. Okay.
Wins, man. The 10 seasons.
All right.
Like, dude, he's enshrined, man. Like, you're a Jets fan. Please, man.
He is the greatest. He is the greatest coach of all time. But I will say, even Lombardi, I think we overlooked a key part of every all-time great head coach. If we're looking based on the modern NFL of what makes an all-time great head coach, there is only one that should belong on that list by himself, and he's one that has won multiple Super Bowls with multiple quarterbacks, and that is Joe Gibbs. Joe Gibbs is criminally underrated in NFL history of all-time great head coaches because he won not one Super Bowl, not two Super Bowls, but 3 championships with different quarterbacks. That is unheard of in NFL history. Chuck Noll didn't do it. Bill Walsh didn't do it. Belichick, Lombardi, all the all-time great head coaches all won with a strong quarterback, but Joe Gibbs did it because Joe Gibbs understood, and he had the mantra of, I'm going to have a great team, and I'm going to be able to work with whatever quarterback I have to overwhelm opponents. And that's exactly what the Redskins did in the 80s.
That's a good point, Nick. I mean, I'm a Gibbs fan as well.
Ooh,
the only thing that I think hurt his stock in my book was him coming back to coach them, and he didn't do too well.
But I would disagree. I think he was incredible. The only time in 20 years where the Redskins were actually good under Dan Snyder is when he brought back Joe Gibbs because he made the playoffs twice. He won a playoff game. That was the only time. Like they were respectable under Gibbs, even that second stint. It's incredible what this guy did.
Yeah, I have his second stint here. So he came back for 4 years. So after leaving in 1992, he came back 12 years later in 2004. He sucked the first year. He finished last in the NFC East. The next year, he went 10-6 and went to the divisional round. So won a playoff game, to your point, Nick. Then they went 5-11, last in the NFC East again. And then he went to the playoffs in his final season. They were 9-7, and also to Seattle. So I don't know if it was a Seattle thing that he lost to the Seahawks twice in both of his stints back in the playoffs. But they did win a playoff game coming back. He had a nice little run there. So.
Nice. So BG, man, if you don't mind, either now or later on, just let me know how much super chat money I need to put in to be the leader.
Oh, wow. Okay. Yeah. I mean, I guess I can do that right now. So let's see. All right, let's do this. So you're at 20. So that's 14 behind. So what's the math on that? Let me beep boop bap that real quick. So okay. Let me sure, because this is always the good, entertaining stuff here. All right, let me make sure I got my math correct here. That's Reaper. It looks like it's $45. Will put you in front of our number one Austrian Jet fan. I guess that'll put you just in front of him.
My man, Nick. Thanks again, BG. As always, have a good one.
Well, there you go. Chef Kevin Gilbert sounds like he's going to the deep end of the pool. Okay, number one Austrian Jet fan. Watch out, baby. Looks like Chef Kevin Gilbert might be diving in with a cannonball. That might be happening. Again, we got a couple hundred people in the room. Like the video, hit subscribe. So, okay, I was curious when Nick, I gave the Bill Belichick just a throwaway comment. You went, and immediately in my head, I'm like, wow, who is the guy on his list then? And then when old Chef Kevin Gilbert went over the top, Vince Lombardi, baby, I was like, ooh, baby, who has, again, if we're going purely off head coaching, he has more world championships than Belichick. Belichick had 2 as a defensive coordinator, so he has 8 total. Vince Lombardi had 7 rings. He had 5 of the NFL championship, and then they called it the Super Bowl, and he got 2 of those. So 7 rings on that figure. So
I would argue the 2 years he won the Super Bowl, he shouldn't count NFL championships. However, I will say the pre-Super Bowl era in NFL history is being criminally ignored. And I think it's wrong. I think we look at teams, how many Super Bowls do you have? It should be, how many championships do you have? Because just because the term was not called Super Bowl until the late 60s does not mean you just ignore 40 years of NFL history, because it's just easier to talk about. The Lions' history is one of great success in the 1950s and 60s. They were one of the most feared teams in all of football. The Browns, I believe, to this day, would have the most championships in NFL history
if we counted
counted that, because they won a bunch in the 50s. So when I look at pre-NFL history, I've actually always been a big proponent that the NFL should adopt NFL championships pre-Super Bowl as their own championship. So when they look at Super Bowl banners, you should be seeing, 1 in 1948, 49, and 60 on top of the ones you win in the Super Bowl era. I think it's wrong to just erase 40 years of all-time great players and coaches just because it didn't have a Super Bowl name attached to it.
Yeah, the Cleveland Browns have 4 NFL championships, and before they were the NFL, it was the All-America Football Conference where he won another 4. So putting all that together before the merger, they had all those together. But again, now, right, we have this term, Super Bowl. Well, Browns, you've never won a Super Bowl, loser. Oh, geez. Well, okay then. So you have a little bit of that going on. All right, let's go back to the phone lines, and we got Bubba Badshaw here on the program. What's up, brother?
Damn it, Nick. I was calling in to point out the whole Browns championship.
Ooh, wow. Okay. I love the history football fans coming in. That's great.
I consider myself an NFL historian, so
beautiful.
That's point of pride.
Yeah, that's what I was calling. I was going to be like, how many championships did, because they were all under Paul Brown, weren't they? All those championships?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I do believe so. Yeah.
Yep.
But, another quarterback that people don't talk about, Otto Graham.
Yep.
Yeah.
He's my favorite quarterback of all time. I mean, obviously, I didn't live to watch him throw a pass or nothing, but that being said, I don't know, with all those championships, and then I want to say the last championship he won, and this, I may be wrong on that.
Yeah.
I want to say the last one he won, he had retired that year, and their backup got hurt.
I believe something.
Yes,
like that
actually, I do have that here. You are right. So he won 3 NFL championships and 4 AAFC, as we explained before. That was pre the NFL. So he won 4 more there. So he has 7 championships. But that last one in the NFL that you referenced, he had retired and then he came back and then won that one. That was with the Cleveland Browns in 55. That was his final season. Crazy.
Yeah, because I believe back, and you're talking about the AAFC?
That was the original one, but the NFL one is what you're talking about, which was his final run in the league, which was in 1955. That was his last year as a player, but there was this retirement and coming back to win that one that you're talking about.
Because I know back in the day, it was like it's kind of like the AFL, NFL. The NFL was like the dominant team.
Correct.
But yeah, I think like the Browns, there was something with the Browns where they merged them and let them play a game or something, and the Browns came in and like stomped some team.
That's crazy.
I don't know my facts on that, but
that's all right.
Anyway, yeah, when I heard y'all talking about coaches and stuff, I was like, I got to call in and say Paul Brown. But
there you go.
Also, the Rodgers thing, I think we need to see how he handles Los Angeles and Buffalo, because we've got Los Angeles, Buffalo, and Miami.
That's correct. In that order. Yes, that's correct. Yes.
Okay. I think I don't see us beating Los Angeles or Buffalo, but I think we should definitely be able to beat Miami. I don't know. They haven't really played that well. They didn't play well. So
yeah, definitely not.
We'll see. But I hadn't called in a while. Thought I'd call in.
Nice.
say a few things, but appreciate y'all having me. Y'all be careful and have a great day.
Beautiful. Badshaw back, and appreciate the gifted membership earlier today via PayPal, baby. There you go, our boy Badshaw. Good to have him back on the show. I know we have a lot of callers that sometimes kind of go on these hiatuses, which is fine. I appreciate the supporting the show, whether you're calling in or not. It means the world. Appreciate it. All right, let's go next. We got a couple of callers here. We're trying to get in everybody. EZ's next here on the show. What's up, EZ?
Hey, how you doing?
Excellent.
I have a question for Nick.
Oh, sure.
You do the Mets too, right?
Potentially starting to write for them. We'll see. Some stuff's in the works.
What's up with Pete? Do you know what's up with Pete Alonso?
Not at all.
Oh, okay. Anyway, next back to football. I watched that. I watched that 30 for 30 yesterday after the show, the sack exchange.
Yes.
Those were my boys.
Yeah.
I mean, those were my guys. Those were the guys I grew up watching. It was really sad seeing Abdul Salam, as sick as he was. And after hearing Mark Gastineau talk about what happened to him when he was a child, getting molested, it was like, oh my God, what pain that man must have had in his heart the whole time, coming from this small town. And now all of a sudden you're thrust into New York City. And it was too big for him, but not on the field. Mm-hmm. It was never too big for him on the field. That was the thing. That's why people didn't understand him.
Yeah, I guess my only request is if Aaron Rodgers got a 3-part, 3+ hour documentary series, I wish Sack Exchange would have been longer. I wish it would have given a little bit more time for the 30 for 30 because it's under an hour, right?
Yeah, it was about 55 minutes, something like that. It was good, though. I mean,
I think there's going to be a legitimate push, particularly after this documentary. I think there's going to be a legitimate push to get Gastineau in the Hall of Fame.
Oh, that'd be wonderful.
He deserves it. He deserves it. I mean, just because, he was an innovator. He was the first guy to celebrate on the field. They changed the NFL to the no fun league because of him. Yeah. And now they got guys doing fun bunch in the end zones now, going up to the cameras all waving and shit.
Oh, you got Billy White Shoes Johnson. Billy White Shoes Johnson.
Oh yeah, the greatest dance on the planet. That was awesome. That wiggle leg of his.
I look at it, and I think the thing that hurts Gastineau the most is, one, the start of his run, the start of his dominance came before the sack was created. The sack statistic was created. That's the first part. The second part being he played in an era where Lawrence Taylor and Reggie White were regardless, they were the two best defensive players of the era. You couldn't argue it. They're two of the greatest defensive players of all time. And when you have that, it stunts the popularity. It stunts the overall look of a player like that. And I think the third example, if I may, L.C. Greenwood of the Pittsburgh Steelers. He's not in the Hall of Fame, but he is an all-time great player. He should also be in the Hall of Fame. The reason why
at least his golden shoe should be in there.
But think about it. The reason why he isn't is because NFL Hall of Fame voters look and say, well, you got your numbers because of Joe Green. That Joe Green was there. He was the better player. He's in the Hall of Fame. You're not. I think people looked and said, well, Klecko was the better guy. So Gastineau is going to be overshadowed by that. Now, I will argue and question, if that's the argument to be made why Gastineau's not in the Hall of Fame, then why did it take Klecko 50 years? Obviously not 50 years, but it took him a very long time to get into the Hall of Fame. Why did it take Klecko so long to do that if he was clearly the better player on a historical group in NFL history?
Yeah, there were Hall of Fame offensive linemen that played against Klecko who said he was the toughest son of a bitch they ever played with in their entire careers ever. Mm-hmm. They said he had a motor that didn't stop. He never gave up on a play. He was as strong as an ox. If you ever saw one of those Smokey and the Bandit movies, he's deadlifting a Chevy van so they could change a tire. That was not a stunt. He was deadlifting a Chevy van so they could change a tire. I mean, the guy was a monster. He was a monster. He was just his natural farm boy strength. But the other thing I was going to say is Mark Gastineau played in a league where they ran the ball, and he is arguably the best pass rusher in the history of the NFL.
Wow. Well, yeah. Interesting.
He
I
was
don't know about that.
he was the biggest, and he was like one of the fastest guys in the NFL, and he was a defensive end. He ran people down from behind. I mean, the guy was just insanely, incredibly strong and fast. He didn't go for the runners too often, but still, as far as just a pure pass rusher, who was better than him?
It's a fair question to raise, but
I mean, Reggie, Lawrence Taylor. Again, this is not me saying Gastineau does not belong in the Hall of Fame. I think he does, and I think this 30 for 30 documentary is going to be the push to get him in there. But I'm sorry, he's not better than Reggie, and he's not better than Lawrence Taylor, and those are the top two guys of that era.
The thing that I will say for Mark, it's a great stat from the Dan Patrick Show, that over a 6-year span, Mark Gastineau has the second most sacks ever over any 6-year span in NFL history, where he had 92 sacks. The only one who was better was a name you just mentioned, Nick, which was Reggie Wright, who had 97 sacks over a 6-year span. So he's second on that group, which is if I was in front of the Hall of Fame, that's the first stat I would put up for Mark Gastineau. I'm like, look at this elite run for this period of time. Now you could say one trick pony. You could say, well, that was a run of time, a pocket of this, as opposed to some people had more longevity and things of that nature. And those are all factors that obviously have to be put in there. And good Lord have mercy, Chef Kevin Gilbert, I'm losing my words because of this. Unbelievable with this massive super chat coming in. Wow. Good Lord have mercy. Wow. And Nick, I know you have to go here in a minute as well, but Chef Kevin Gilbert sending in this 50 spot of a super chat saying, if no one helped, did a great job on the song. Salute to the Coffee Club and all the Jet fans who want to see wins. Nick, thanks for joining us. I don't think we're going to see you next week. It's Christmas morning, but I'll be live on in the morning. So, you should probably take some time with your family for Pete's sake.
Most likely I'll be with my family, so we'll coordinate that in worst case.
Yeah, that's for the best. So there he is, Nick Faria, baby, our Jets reporter from Athlon Sports. I'll be doing a Christmas show, but I'll be doing that solo. But shout out to Chef Kevin Gilbert, who went over the top rope, baby. With that, Chef Kevin Gilbert has just jumped into the lead in our emoji contest. He, with all of the super chat money he's given this month, he has 37 gifted memberships, which is now the new number one on the leaderboard. Number two is number one Austrian Jets fan at 34, and then followed up by FL Phil 98 at 28. And then we have Ed Vargas at 25. We have MFC at 23. So it is an incredibly tight race. But Chef Kevin Gilbert just went over the top rope. Salute. A.K.A. Fastest Food Reviews, A.K.A. Chef Kevin Gilbert. Oh, my goodness. Man, Chef, I appreciate the support for the show, baby. That is absolutely terrific. We'll leave that up on the screen, baby. And, Danny giving some love to Bruce Smith. That's another good one. There's no doubt about it. All right, let's keep going on the phone lines. We'll try to get everybody in here. I'm running out of time before the radio show, but let's do it. B-Mac, you're up next. What's up, B-Mac?
Hey, Paul. Back to back. So
that's it, baby.
Yeah. Now, first of all, before I get, I'm gonna, ask you about Rodgers, but
yeah, baby, go ahead. I'm in a great Aaron Rodgers mood.
But about this sack exchange.
Yes.
Me being a Packer fan, I'm a big Reggie White guy.
How would you not be? Yeah, of course.
But I was just, I know different eras. I think Reggie White came in early 1990s because I know he played for Philly.
Yeah, his full career, because he had, obviously, as you mentioned, he obviously had his Packers and Phillies run. His full run, let me see, immediately, he came in, it's 80s and 90s, so he came in, quite frankly, he started off with the Memphis Showboats in 1984, had 2 seasons there before he jumped to the NFL level, and he was with this is a trivia question I would have gotten wrong. He also played for the Panthers in his final season in 2000. It looked like he came back out of retirement, so I forgot about that one. But yeah, so he he played for the Eagles from 85 to 92, Packers 93 to 98, and then he came back to play for the Panthers for a season, I guess.
Yeah, I think, and then a hot take. I think Reggie White is better than Lawrence Taylor. You know, what I mean, that's
really interesting.
Yes,
okay,
yes.
Why is that?
I just think that Reggie White, and again, it's not because I'm a Packer guy. It's not, well, actually,
right.
It is a little biased, but
sure. Okay.
I just think do his time and do his prime, there's no one dominant than Reggie, because he can take over a game. The Super Bowl that the Packers won with Brett Favre, he easily could have won the Super Bowl MVP. I think he set the record for sacks in that Super Bowl. But Desmond Howard ended up getting it. But you do make an argument for him. I just think that in his prime, like, there was no one better. Like, he can definitely dominate a game. But the reason I'm in the sack exchange, what if Reggie White played with the sack exchange back then? Do you think the Jets would have a Super Bowl in that time frame?
That's a good question. Probably not. But not. It's no disrespect to Reggie White. Reggie White was awesome, but the foursome of the New York Sack Exchange was awesome. Mark Esno, Abdul Salam, Marty Lyons, Mark Esno. They were all great, and despite their greatness, the Jets didn't have that team success. So making the defensive line better because Reggie White's awesome would have been cool to watch, but I don't know if that was the difference for the team success, unfortunately, for the New York Jets. I think there's a lot of other things we could point to of why they didn't win more with that group. I don't think it was because of the lack of talent on the defense. But again, it's sad because I wish that they would have gotten more success, because while we all talk about the New York Sack Exchange and they have some nice whatever, like people know who they are, people would know who they are a lot better if they would have had the team success, which is unfortunate. And yeah, that's what Hep says. 2 players with 20 sacks, pretty gosh darn good as well for the Jets.
Yeah, so that's dope. I gotta watch that. But yeah, now to my Rodgers thing.
Sure. Yeah.
Just 2 points real quick.
Okay.
Now I know this one is off the field. Now I know you saw the documentary.
I did. Yesterday.
Yeah, I saw clips of it. It sounds really good.
Oh, it's really interesting. I highly recommend it. Yeah.
But I know, like, now does it bother you? Because I don't know, it bothers you, or not you, but I know, like, a lot of people, including some Jet fans, are like saying, "Damn, man, like, I wish he could have done this. Like, the Jets were 10-4, not 4-10." You know what I mean? Because I think now that it seems like, I know some people have complaints, like, they don't want to hear from him because the team is losing, and you know what I mean, and I think, like, when you're losing, and people don't want to hear from that person too much. What do you think on that? And then I got a second question.
Yeah, I push back aggressively on that. For me, the thing I respect most from athletes is that you show up to the proverbial, and I use that word for the podium or shows or anything. I like it when an athlete shows up whether they win or lose. When you win, it's easy to step up at the podium. I'm in front of BMAC, and BMAC's like, "Paul, you're so handsome and great." Yeah, thanks, BMAC. I know. I win all the time. But then when I lose, if I don't show up to the podium and I hide and try to avoid awkward conversations and things of that nature, no. I want them speaking when they're winning. I want them speaking when they're losing. So I have no problems with all of Rodgers' commitments, because he doesn't commit to the Pat McAfee show as a random example. He doesn't say, "I'm only going to come on when I win." He says, I've agreed to come on for insert amount of time, win, loss, tie, bye week, anything in between. So as far as I'm concerned, I'm totally cool with him talking, whether it's like stuff like the documentary or his normal press conferences or the Pat McAfee show or these random podcasts. I like hearing about him. I like learning about him. Again, like this ayahuasca thing, which is one of the things of the doc. I had no idea what the word ayahuasca even meant until I've learned and met Aaron Rodgers. I didn't meet him in person, but like just learning about him and then seeing him go through this ceremony in South America or Cuba or wherever it was, Costa Rica it was. My brain failed for a second. Like, it was super fascinating. Him getting face painted, drinking the psychedelic stuff, him talking about it looked like he was high, talking about caterpillars turning into butterflies. Like, it was just weird, but it was interesting to hear his motivations for it and learning more about him as a person. So long story short, I got no problem with any of his talking, whether wins or losses.
And now I will clip for myself because I know you got Jet, but yeah, I think now yesterday Kirk Cousins got benched.
I saw that. Yeah, it's crazy.
Now this does make it interesting for the Jets. Let's say now, what I want to say, ask you that, because I know that some people say, well, Kirk Cousins to the Jets. If Rodgers retires, like, that will make sense, you know what I mean? Because Rodgers is off the board. Kurt is probably one of the guys on there that might be intriguing. But if Rodgers wants to play, and if he wants to play for the Jets, then I don't get people saying that replace him with Kirk. Because if you want to replace him with Kirk, you might as well just keep Rodgers. And people talk about the dead cat money. If Kirk, like whatever Kirk does and where he goes, his contract, his contract is going to be expensive for people to pay.
Mm-hmm. It will be. Yeah, I would. You answered it beautifully there. If Aaron Rodgers wants to come back, and again, I after watching the documentary, I'm fully for him coming back. I want him back. There's no more doubt in my mind anymore. I want him back fully. I want to run it back with him and this new regime of the head coach and GM or whatever that looks like, and Devontae Adams and everybody. I want to run it back. But if he was to retire or somehow not be an option, like retire, it seems to be the only option that would be. Then Cousins and anybody you'd have to explore if you're the Jets, because then you'd have to be searching for interest. At Cousins, do you trade for Matt Stafford? Do you go for a free agent? Do you trade up in the draft? Like, what do you do? But if Rodgers is coming, like Rodgers wants to come back, there is no way in God's green earth I'm flipping Rodgers for Kirk Cousins, because, and I'm not saying that's what you're saying, but that's what some people would suggest. Kirk Cousins, again, in his last 5 or 6 games, he has 1 touchdown and 9 picks. That's disgusting. And Nick Faria said over the last 6 or 7 games, Aaron Rodgers has 13 touchdowns to 1 pick. Give me Aaron Rodgers. He doesn't look washed. Kirk Cousins looks washed. I'm all aboard the Aaron Rodgers train. So again, maybe we can have uncomfortable conversations if somehow, Aaron Rodgers doesn't come back. Then we could talk about stuff. But besides that, heck no.
Yeah. And then real quick, what's your opinion on this Rodgers and Ryan Clark beef?
Ryan Clark is a boob, man. He's a boob. He lost Aaron Rodgers in the Super Bowl, and he's never gotten over it. Calling him a fraud and all this other stuff. I don't know why we have to do personal attacks on ESPN and all this other stuff. Like, Aaron Rodgers is a polarizing guy. People love to talk about him. Ryan Clark is an idiot. I don't like Ryan Clark. I don't like a lot of the stupid things he says. I don't like his stupid suits. I don't like his stupid insignia on his suit that has RC as initials. I think Ryan Clark is an idiot. And I think we'd all be smarter if we stopped listening to Ryan Clark. That's how I feel.
Yeah, and I think Rodgers exposed him doing what he did.
Very much so.
But
very much
yeah,
so. B-Mac.
That's it.
All right, thanks, brother. Appreciate you joining us on the show. And real quick, I just want to answer this comment here. Alan says, Matt Stafford isn't going anywhere? ? He and the Rams reworked his contract, so there's no guaranteed money left after this year. So they're going to, after the season, come together to talk about his future. Now, you may say, based on the results, he's obviously coming back, but he is a guy that could be available. Again, I want Aaron Rodgers, so it doesn't matter anyway. Thanks, everybody, for tuning in. What a historic show. Thanks to Chef Kelvin Gilbert. Thanks to the gifted memberships. And thanks to HEP for this absolute gem, baby. And we'll play it as we're heading out. Thanks, HEP. We love you, buddy. And thank you, FL Phil 98, for the lyrics. Here we go.
Sitting here where we've been sitting before, wondering why we keep taking more. If you know why, please share with me. Starting every season, anticipation, hope it don't end in frustration. Why won't the football gods just let us be? We are fans of the New York Jets. Root for them, you'll have regrets. Ain't been happy since Super Bowl III. We need change, folks have been fired. We need change, it's time to inspire. Pray they turn around as quick as can be. Here's to next year, let's believe we can win. Here's to next year, start all over again. Let's keep smiling, there'll always be next year. Let's keep smiling, there'll always be next year. Let's keep smiling, there'll always be